Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Rage. Welcome back to another one of my discussion videos. If anyone besides me remembers the Dead Rising franchise, then you guys know that this is a franchise that was basically murdered by Capcom. And as much as I love Capcom and Resident Evil, this is still a grudge that I have against Capcom because I am a very big fan of the Dead Rising franchise when it actually was alive and wasn't dead. It's quite unfortunate because Dead Rising, the first Dead Rising, I mean, like the actual first Dead Rising, was such an amazing zombie game. It's pretty outdated these days. You know, the leveling system sucks. It's kind of frustrating. The save system is garbage. The AI is horrendous, but the first Dead Rising game is iconic. I remember the first time playing this back on the Xbox 360 when I was just a little guppy. And this was during a time when I was also really into zombies. So I fell in love with the first Dead Rising almost the minute I started playing it, especially since Dawn of the Dead was a zombie film that I enjoyed as well when I was a kid. And I remember watching that with my cousin. So I'm a huge fan of Dead Rising. And again, like I said, as much as I love Capcom and I have not too much hate against them, I do think that Capcom sucks for killing Dead Rising. Now, basically, the reasons why I am blaming Capcom for the death of Dead Rising is because they watched a shitty development team create Dead Rising 4, and obviously the game was going to suck because the people who made Dead Rising 4 did not put enough time and effort into Dead Rising 4 in the first place. The game basically came out of the oven half cooked, which is why it was kind of a raw experience. And this is why it was a very, very mediocre sequel. Because compared to the first Dead Rising, and even Dead Rising 3, which was kind of considered a bad sequel, Dead Rising 4 was terrible. I mean, in my opinion, it wasn't the worst game I ever played. There were some moments of enjoyment with Dead Rising 4, but for the most part, it was a bad game. Like I just said, Capcom Vancouver, or I guess the team at Capcom Vancouver, really did not put a lot of effort into Dead Rising 4. I mean, the fact that they removed so much, the timer mechanic, the psychopath boss fights. I mean, the boss fights in Dead Rising 4 was definitely the most disappointing thing about it. I mean, Dead Rising has some of the most iconic boss fights in gaming. I mean, if you played the first Dead Rising, you know what I'm talking about. And even Dead Rising 3, even Dead Rising 3 had some really fun boss fights. Dead Rising 4's boss fights were terrible. And this is why Dead Rising 4 was considered such a bad game. I mean, I'll start with some positives. This is not a review, but I'll start off with some things I did kind of like about Dead Rising 4. Don't worry, it'll be quick. I kind of liked the way the mall looked. I liked the Christmas vibe that was going for, because it was set during Christmas. I actually played Dead Rising 4 every Christmas as kind of like a guilty pleasure as well as a tradition. So I like the whole Christmas setting. I like the way the mall looks. I like the combat. The combat's decent. The upgrade system is all right. But yeah, other than that, Dead Rising 4 was not a very good game. The fact that there was the boss fights were terrible. The combat was somewhat generic. I mean, Frank West in Dead Rising 4 was terrible. And this is why I blame Capcom, because Capcom should have had a better team behind Dead Rising 4 instead of the team that made Dead Rising 4, because obviously it was not a good game. It was nowhere near as good as the first, the second, or even the third Dead Rising. Even the DLCs in the Dead Rising franchise were better than Dead Rising 4 because they still felt like classic Dead Rising. Just like Crobat's video, Dead Rising 4 is nothing compared to Dead Rising 1. It doesn't feel like Dead Rising. It feels like a totally different game and not a very good one. And one thing that's even worse is the fact that after Dead Rising 4 came out, then Capcom shuts down Capcom Vancouver. Like, one bad game is enough to kill the entire franchise? Really? I mean, I understand that Capcom didn't want another bad screw up, because if Dead Rising 5 would have ended up being as bad as Dead Rising 4 or just the same as Dead Rising 4, I know that would have been bad and all, but this is also why it's Capcom's fault, because Capcom should have saw how bad Dead Rising 4 was and should have focused on making sure that the fifth Dead Rising game would have been better than the fourth one by getting a better development team behind Dead Rising 5. But instead, no. They just shut down Capcom Vancouver, essentially killing the Dead Rising franchise. Because we have not had another Dead Rising game since Dead Rising 4, and that game came out in 2016. So we have not had another Dead Rising game for 6 whole years. I mean, that's crazy to think about. I mean, Dead Rising is basically trapped in Capcom's little purgatory of dead franchises that they refuse to bring back. I mean, like I said, I'm a huge fan of Dead Rising. Like, the first game, I love the first game. I remember my first time playing Dead Rising 2 off the record, sandbox mode. Like, I love Dead Rising so much, and honestly, I don't even hate Dead Rising 4. Like, I love this franchise so much that I still forced myself to actually enjoy, or at least try to enjoy, Dead Rising 4. But at the same time, I still hate Dead Rising 4, because why does Dead Rising 4 even exist? Why is this the Dead Rising 4 we got? Like, not only did the team behind Dead Rising 4 not put enough time into it, but it was also pretty rushed. I mean, when Dead Rising 4 first came out, it was loaded with bugs and glitches, which is also further proof that the team behind it clearly did not care enough about actually making it a good game. And that is exactly how bad games are made. When you have a developer or a development team that does not care enough about the game that they are making. If that is the type of developer that is making a game, then you could bet your ass that that game is probably not going to be very good. Because making a good game is no easy task. I mean, making a game in general is no easy task, but making a good game has to be made by a good developer, because a good developer actually cares about the game that they are making. A good developer loves the game that they are making because they care about it so much that they actually want it to be good, which is why they focus on making it good. The team behind Dead Rising 4 was just not that. And again, this is why I blame Capcom, because Capcom probably saw that, because not even Capcom probably cared. Capcom didn't probably even care about the shitty team that was even making Dead Rising 4. And then they're surprised that it was so bad, and then they shut the whole goddamn studio down. Like, if you don't want to make a sequel, at least try and bring the franchise back. Like, Jesus Christ, I mean, Capcom has been doing Resident Evil remakes. We got RE2, RE3 remake, now we're getting RE4 remake. Why can't we get a Dead Rising remake? This is a great way to bring back a dead franchise. Dead Space is doing it. I mean, and Fatal Frame is bringing back remasters. I mean, a Dead Rising remake would be so good. Imagine a full-on remake of the original game, but a more obviously modern version with new features, new mechanics, and imagine the gore. Like, everything. Like, a remake in general would just be so great for the franchise. It would not only bring it back to a brand new audience, but this would also probably lead to us getting another Dead Rising sequel, like Dead Rising 5. I mean, I don't think I want a remake of Dead Rising 2, or maybe, I don't know. I mean, I just don't want to see this franchise dead. Like, so many horror franchises are coming back this year. I mean, Dead Space is coming back, Fatal Frame is coming back, Alone in the Dark is coming back. I mean, all these horror franchises are coming back, and Dead Rising is still left in purgatory. And not only that, but the other thing that pisses me off the most is the fact that this franchise still had so much life left in it. I mean, the fact that one game, one fuck up, completely fucked up the entire franchise, just one bad dud, and Capcom completely gave up on the franchise, just one bad sequel. Like, honestly, Capcom is kind of trash. Like, I'm sorry, Capcom kind of sucks because they gave up way too soon. I understand that Dead Rising is obviously not the only important franchise that Capcom owns and is in charge of, but why would you give up on it so soon? After just one bad game, and you completely killed the franchise. How? I mean, we've had plenty of bad Resident Evil games, and that didn't kill the Resident Evil franchise. Sure, you can argue that Resident Evil is more popular than Dead Rising, but still, I mean, doesn't Capcom want more popular franchises under their belt so they can make more money? I mean, don't they want more successful IPs? And not only that, but if Capcom doesn't care about Dead Rising anymore, then why not just sell it off to another developer or another game company? Why keep it under your belt if you're not even going to make more sequels or not even do anything with the franchise? I mean, Capcom has not done anything with Dead Rising since Dead Rising 4. We've had no remasters, no new ports. Hell, we could have at least gotten Dead Rising on the Switch or Dead Rising 3 on a PlayStation console because for some reason Dead Rising 3 is still Xbox exclusive. I mean, at least do something with the franchise, and if you're not, then why keep it? Just sell it to another company so that way they can actually start the franchise again. Because Capcom killed Dead Rising. They may have not been the ones directly responsible for killing it, but at the same time, they kind of were. They were basically the accomplice because, like I said earlier, Capcom should have actually cared more about the team that was making Dead Rising 4. Because the team who made Dead Rising 4 were not good developers. And bad developers will make bad games. Because bad developers do not even care about making their game good in the first place like good developers do. Like I said, good games require good developers who actually give a shit in the first place about the game they are making. They have to actually love the game almost as much as us, the gamers. Because, let me tell you something, passionate game developers are the best. Because passionate game developers actually care about the games they are making. Passionate game developers care about the game they are making, and they care about us because they care about making good games for us, the gamer. So, Capcom should have tried to get a developer like that instead of the shitty developers who made Dead Rising 4. And you know, the sad part is, Dead Rising 4 could have actually been a really good game. Like, Dead Rising 4 had potential to be a better game. But the fact that it was so half-baked, so mediocre, this should have not been the death of Dead Rising. One crappy sequel should have not been the final nail in the coffin for a franchise like Dead Rising, because I am more than sure that this franchise could have taken off. If Dead Rising 4 wouldn't have fucked up the franchise, hell, I bet we could have saw Dead Rising 5, Dead Rising 6, and I bet they all would have been great games if Capcom would have actually had more talented developers making Dead Rising in the first place. I mean, they did. I mean, Dead Rising 1 and 2 were great games, and even Dead Rising 3 was a great game. I mean, it wasn't as good as compared to the first two, but it was still better than Dead Rising 4. I mean, they did have good developers. And not only that, but good games also take a while to make. Dead Rising 4 was obviously rushed. Like, not only did the developers not care about the game that they were making, but it was also pretty rushed. And I think that's pretty obvious. And of course, they lied to us as well, telling us that Dead Rising 4 was going to be more like the first Dead Rising. Bullshit. I mean, Frank West is not even Frank West in Dead Rising 4, I'll admit. As even though I forced myself to try and like Dead Rising 4, Frank West is a fucking cunt in Dead Rising 4. Like, he is so annoying in Dead Rising 4. Like, his character is so over-exaggerated. The humor is so over-exaggerated. You can tell that the developers are trying way too hard to put too much dark humor, but that dark humor worked better in the first Dead Rising because it was executed better. In the fourth Dead Rising, it felt so over-exaggerated. It was worse than GTA 5's humor, just being shoved down our throat. But yeah, Dead Rising 4, obviously a terrible game. I mean, not terrible, not horrible, but still kind of shitty, or still very shitty. And again, this is what pisses me off, because Capcom, instead of just giving up on the franchise, should have focused on making the next Dead Rising better instead of just completely giving up on it. And the thing is, Capcom could still bring the franchise back, and this is what pisses me off even more because they have chosen not to. Dead Rising has been dead for so long. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's been 6 years, maybe 7. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't matter because obviously 2016 was a while ago. So, yeah, like a remake. At least give us a remake. Give us something. Like a Dead Rising remake would be so good. I mean, obviously, Capcom knows how to bring back dying franchises because Resident Evil was also dying. Resident Evil 5 and 6, well, maybe not 5, because it still sold well, but Resident Evil 6 was such a bad Resident Evil. Resident Evil 6 could have killed the Resident Evil franchise, but no. Capcom brought the Resident Evil franchise back with Resident Evil 7, which was a return to the original Resident Evil style games, which is why it was a good sequel. Capcom could have very easily done the same thing with Dead Rising. Dead Rising 5 could have been just like the first Dead Rising, but better and newer. I mean, I heard that Dead Rising 5 was actually coming out. I mean, there was leaked that Dead Rising 5 was actually going to come out, so that's even worse. I mean, the least Capcom could have done was let them finish with Dead Rising 5 before shutting down the studio. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about this whole thing. I would love for Dead Rising to come back, but since Capcom is so focused on Resident Evil right now and Street Fighter and all their other franchises, I doubt they're going to bring back Dead Rising, which is very unfortunate. I mean, the least they could have done was put Dead Rising on the Switch. I mean, hell, a Dead Rising collection on Nintendo Switch with all 4 games and all the DLCs, even Dead Rising 4. Like, even Dead Rising 4, hell, I would be playing that shit on my Switch for hours. I would be playing that at the park. I'd be playing Dead Rising at the park on my Nintendo Switch. Which is, again, why I am right about what I said earlier. Dead Rising had so much life left in it. I mean, the fact that the 4th game pretty much killed the whole franchise is pathetic to me because, like I said, the franchise still had so much more life left in it. I mean, one bad sequel, the 4th game, one bad sequel kills the entire franchise. That is completely stupid in my opinion. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know what you think about the Dead Rising franchise. Do you want Dead Rising to come back, or do you think Capcom will ruin it again? Hopefully, if they do decide to bring it back, hopefully they'll actually have some more talented developers and developers who actually care about the games they are making instead of shitty developers like the ones who made Dead Rising 4. Because if that's not the case, then obviously that'll be even worse. I mean, if Capcom's going to make more bad Dead Rising sequels, then I would rather just have the franchise be dead. So if Capcom does decide to bring back Dead Rising, please make sure that you're actually hiring good developers, talented developers, passionate developers, because those are the type of developers that make good quality games. So yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this discussion video. Let me know what you think about this whole thing. If you stood by till the end, thank you so much for watching. And yeah, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, etc., etc. And I will see you guys in the next discussion video. Take care, y'all. Peace.